Hello, everyone, and happy September. It's September, right? It's still September. It's the fall now. So happy September, everyone. This is PDN Live. I am your moderator, Shannon, and with me, as always, is Rob Pincus. And tonight it is one of the fan favorites. It's Ask Rob Anything. I have a lot of questions already coming in. At any time during this broadcast, if you have any questions, just type them in the box and we'll do the best that we can to get around them. Good news is, since it's a free-for-all, your questions are going to be answered in the order in which they come or relevance. So looking forward to that. And this is brought to you by Springfield Armory. Thank you, Springfield, for your support for PDN Live. For those of you who want to connect with us outside of the PDN Live, you can find us on Twitter at P_D_N, at Instagram at PD Network, on Facebook, and online at Personal Defense Network. So Rob, good to see you again. Looks like you've been pretty busy lately, teaching, filming, talking about a European tour. You want to catch us up on what you've been up to?
You know, normally the September is kind of slow, and then the fall is kind of slow in general, especially, you know, compared to the PDN tour season. And by design, sort of set up the business model so that at one point, like 80% of the classes were kind of crammed in. The end user classes, we were doing a lot of instructor development stuff, but the end user classes were crammed in between March and July, and it's just it's kind of gotten away from me. I went out. We went out Friday before Labor Day weekend, and I literally got back like Monday night or something. So it was like 19 days on the road. It was about 10 days of straight classes. Taught out in California, and then changed coasts. Taught in Connecticut, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire. Was out there for the Live Free or Die event. Freedom Hill Gear and Robin Oak do a great job with that. Lots of great people, industry people were out there. Lots of great companies involved. Warrior Culture Gear that we're doing the Protect What You Love shirts with was out there. Fight Soap, Breakthrough Clean, Made in Apparel. Just a bunch of good companies. The Polymer 80, Bob, you're into that kind of build your own Glock deal. Those guys were out there. So Robin Oak did a great job. About, I think, don't miss quite, I think it was 250 people were there. I know I had 2 sessions. We were signed up for 15 people each, and we had a fair number of crashers, and all the training sessions were filled, and the 3-gun match went really well. So that was fun. And now we've got the 10th annual Combat Focused Shooting Instructor Conference this weekend. I actually fly to Minneapolis. That's the PDN headquarters, but I'm not going to head over to the office. I'm going to head directly south down into Rice County. Faribault is the name of the town down there that will be closest to for the 10th annual Combat Focused Shooting Instructor course. We did the first one in New Mexico, and the only place that we've had 2 is my home range, Ancient City, down in Florida. Otherwise, we made a commitment to try to bounce it around, and we go west of the Mississippi, east of the Mississippi every other year. So it was about time we did one in PDN's home state. So we'll be there with about 40 instructors that have been with the program for, some of them, all of that, actually more than that, 10 years. The program, we first started certifying people in 2005. And some of them are brand new defensive firearms coaches that just went through our entry-level instructor development program. We're going to have a guest instructor. The guys don't know who it is, but it will be someone who they're familiar with, certainly, and the PDN audience is familiar with. So for some pictures in the social media, Friday, when that presentation is given to the instructors that come in for all of our updates and kind of team building stuff that we'll do. How did your home range do with the hurricane? Everything's good down there. In fact, just about everybody that I know personally came through pretty darn well, especially, obviously, a lot of the people down in Miami. Although, apparently, I did find out when I was in New Hampshire that the HQ for Made in Apparel, they didn't have Wi-Fi. So, you know, that was kind of a bummer apparently for a couple days. But other than that, there's still a lot of people down there, you know, without power. And it's almost like the aftermath is way worse than the storm, I know, for a lot of people, and they're dealing with that. But I think they made out way better than some of our people in Houston did after the first big storm that hit. And now I've got friends down in Puerto Rico, and we're certainly, you know, our thoughts are with them as they go through the aftermath of what really was, they're saying, maybe the biggest storm that's hit there in, you know, modern times, but certainly in at least about 85 years. So lots of crazy stuff. We have, you know, disaster prep information we've put out before through PDN, and we've been kind of putting that back at the forefront. And I put up a blog, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks ago, just to give people some pointers, because I think obviously it's on people's minds. It's like when active shooter events happen, spree killer events happen, people are thinking about it. So we try to put that information out. And even if it's not someone in the PDN audience, maybe you've seen it before, but maybe you have friends or family members who might have this stuff on their mind now, and they wouldn't have even noticed 3 years ago when we originally put out that video. But now it's on everybody's mind. It's on our consciousness. People are talking about it on talk radio. So we try to reshare those things. And, really that's kind of a lesson I try to pass on to all the PDN audience and all the students. Remember that you're out on the internet, you're on your social media, you're having conversations at the range, gun classes. There may be a video that helps you explain something to somebody or answers a question for somebody that, even though it's not new, it was really valuable to you 4, 5, 6, 10 years ago. Dig that up and share it. That's what the search engines are for.
So this will be my question on tonight, but what are the 3 things that people can do before or after for disaster prep?
The big thing that I like to push is this idea of, trigger events or action sequences. Like, so you set up a time, like for people that live in flood zones, that's always the example I give, because that's the easiest one. It's the most literal. But when the water reaches a certain level, water reaches a tree, you set this up ahead of time in a sober moment when there's no water, there's no rain, you're not even thinking about it, the dry season, you just kind of look at the history and look at times and things like that it takes for the water to get into your house or to block the roadway. If you live down the road, but there's a big, dip in the road where you aren't going to drive out. If the water is barely in your backyard, but your road's blocked, it's too late to get out. So you research and you set the markers, and when the water reaches the tree, you make a reservation somewhere inland or away from where the water is rising, or you call your family member that lives 150 miles away and say, hey, I might be coming over. You pack a bag. When the water reaches the big rock near the porch, you put that bag in the car and you start preparing the house. You get the stuff up off the ground or out of the basement. You put the stuff up on the counters, the electronics, the stuff that can be damaged by water, the books, the pictures, all that. When the water touches the porch, you get in your car and you go. And you make those decisions and you set that plan with your family before the moment where you're going to be emotionally responding, right? The moment where, okay, the water's been rising for 3 or 4 days. There's no way it's going to come up another 2 feet, and that's how you rationalize. And then you end up on the roof, with some guy in a duck boat or a, Coast Guard helicopter picking you up because you knew better, but you talked yourself out of it in the moment, right? So I think the same thing, when you think about the hurricane, when you see that 1,000-mile wide cone that is includes your house, start looking for a hotel, start calling the family members, think about, okay, what if we do have to leave? And that, it's maybe 5 or 6 days out, 2 or 3 days out, it's too late really. And especially you look at Florida or you look at anywhere around, New Orleans, you get the places that do get hit, at least every 2 or 3 years, that people know, they've learned their lessons, right? So they make those reservations ahead of time. They call their family members ahead of time. If you're still hemming and hawing 12 hours before landfall, you're going to be told to go to a shelter and not to try to leave by a lot of communities on the coast, all around the Gulf and in the Southeast. So, setting those markers, how many days out, if it's a category 3 and I'm inside the cone and it's 3 days out, I'm going to make a hotel reservation. I'm going to pack a bag. I'm going to start securing the valuables, things like that. So I think some of that sounds easy. It's really just the commitment to actually follow through and do it. Having some, emergency fund cash or, that your points with the hotel club that you're going to spend to make that commitment. In the batteries, certainly some kind of food, canned food, probably better than like a lot of the dehydrated food. It's not like it's not going to need to last for 7 years, right? But the canned food better than a dehydrated food, because the canned food will last. You don't have to worry about cooking a lot of it. A lot of it's either pre-cooked or it doesn't need to be cooked, and it doesn't require extra water. So that's the problem with a lot of that canned food and the dehydrated food is, the rice, the pasta, that kind of stuff. It'll keep forever, but then you open that bag up and you have a limited supply of water in the aftermath and limited supply of electricity if it's like boil the water and seal the bag. So I think people need to think about that. One of the other things is, I saw that, I forget where I saw it, great trick. If you do leave, guy took a cup of ice, like a plastic cup, filled it with water, let it freeze, and then put a coin on top of the ice and put it back in the freezer right before he evacuated. And the idea was, if you left and the power went out for any long duration of time, then if that ice melted, the coin would go to the bottom of the cup and you would know that maybe your food had thawed, and then maybe, you know, power comes back on, but you don't get back into your neighborhood because of a state of emergency, or bridge gets washed out. You go back 3 days later, you can look at that cup and know whether or not your food is safe to eat, because you wouldn't know otherwise. I thought that was pretty brilliant.
Very interesting. You found that online?
Somebody, it was in one of the news feeds, and I wish I could attribute it, but I just saw it and I was like, well, that's pretty brilliant common sense there. And I forget who it was.
Very
it was
cool.
on the Instagram.
Very cool. Very good advice on being prepared, and maybe that could be a future topic for PDN Live. And like Rob said, you guys check out PDN's library. They definitely have disaster response type videos and content. Okay, so on to more of the audience favorite of PDN Live, Ask Rob Anything. We'll switch gears from disaster preparedness to technique and gear and all things personal defense. So.
All right, you would cut in and out there, so if I start going like that, it means I don't know where you are, Shannon. I'm going to make stuff up now. That's what
deal.
That's what
All right. So the first question comes in from James. He has a CCW, but he has a friend who is a felon, and they hang out a lot. He wants to know where does his friend's rights and his restrictions begin. For example, is his friend allowed to be in the car with him while he's carrying legally?
You know, there's a technical, you know, got to throw it to the ask the lawyer kind of thing. You know, if that guy's on probation, he should ask his probation officer. And then, you know, unfortunately, a lot of times the lawyers or the probation officer might kind of think you want to do, as James says, it infringes on his rights, and James doesn't want to get his friend in trouble. So I think there's some common sense. If you have a gun in a, you know, holster secured under your dash, and you leave your gun in that holster in the car while you run into the bank or you run into the pharmacy or whatever, for some reason you leave, maybe it's an extra gun, so you're still carrying your gun, you get out of your car and you leave your felon friend in the car, I'm pretty sure that your felon friend is going to be in trouble, and you might be in trouble because you just gave access of your firearm to a felon, whether you trust him or not, you know, on a technicality. Same thing, you leave him in your house. If the guns are locked in a safe, probably no harm, no foul. If the safe is open or the gun is open in plain view, and, you know, you have to try to pick it up for basketball practice or something, technically and you're in violation. So if the gun is in your immediate control, if you have control over it, it's on your person, or, you know, it's in your backpack or in your purse and it's sitting right there next to you, and you don't leave that other person who doesn't have access legally to firearms alone, I think you're going to be okay. You know, the reality is, it's kind of like, you know, you're probably not going to take someone when you're walking around downtown in whatever near city you live near, and you legally are carrying, but you have to go into a bank. You have to go into some place that's restricted, and you don't want to break the law. So you're going to call you're walking around with your friend, and you're going to, like, I don't know, go into the restroom or something and, like, do a handoff, like, here, hold my gun, and you're going to go into the bank. Well, you wouldn't, if the person didn't have a valid concealed carry permit, you would be setting that person up, you know, for a potential felony charge, because now they're carrying a gun in public and they don't have a permit for it. You know, I think there's some common sense to this that it doesn't need to be overthought. There are probably things you wouldn't do if you knew they were going to get your friend in trouble. And if you're just doing the things you would normally do to get yourself, you know, through life, I think you're going to be fine. Now, if you have a friend who's telling you something that doesn't jive, and this probably isn't for James because he seems like, you know, he's thinking this through, but everybody else, if you have a friend that just keeps asking you to do something you know is illegal, you probably shouldn't do it. You know, you got a felon friend. He's like, hey, just take me to the range, man. Would it be okay? Like, it'll be okay. Nobody will know. I want to go shooting with you. You know, you have to be really careful with that. And I've had to have some, you know, difficult conversations with friends and stuff over time for, you know, the number one thing for me is alcohol, right? Somebody's been drinking, they come over to the house, like, hey, I saw a picture you put up on Instagram. Is that gun around? Or, you know, I want to check that out or whatever. And I used to be a lot more relaxed about that, or lackadaisical, I would guess, reckless probably in some cases of allowing people to have access to firearms around me, or tolerating people, you know, messing around with firearms around me when they were drinking. And, you know, it's just common sense. You just got to say no, and right thing for the right reason, I think, and you're probably okay, James.
Got it. Okay, we're going to switch gears from questionable friends to gear and techniques. So Rick asks, did you have a weapon-mounted light or hand carried, and what lumen strength? And then second part of that, can you show us how to hand carry and possibly shoot while carrying a light?
I can't shoot while carrying a light right now, no. Oh, maybe, oh, I see. Possibly if you have. Got it. Got it. All right, so as people know, I hope they know, we don't say it all the time, but just so you people know two things about Rob Anything. A, it's not really Ask Rob Anything. PDN team screen that stuff, but they do sometimes tell me some of the funnier things afterwards. But I don't screen these myself, so I don't know what the questions are. But because there's questions like this in the past where it would have been way better to have some tools around, Shannon does send me like, hey, make sure that you have a flashlight. So for example, she said today, like, make sure you have a flashlight. Well, I've got a flashlight in my pocket. I've got, which I would have anyway, but I've got a weapon-mounted light gun and a couple of handheld little guns here. So I knew this something was coming, and first thing I'm going to do is say, you know, this is one that I'm not going to cover in enough detail. But if you go on a Friends network, or you just go to any search engine, you put my name in, or you put PDN, put Combat Focused Shooting IC Training Company, and search, you know, weapon-mounted light or flashlight technique, shooting in low light, you're going to get way more in-depth articles and videos than we're going to get into now. So first, I think the first one was weapon-mounted light. So this gun is a gun that's staged in a tactical walls unit in the house. Normally, it's not right now, and it's empty. But this is a pretty typical home defense gun that you might find in a house I live in. So a light and laser module, and I can actually set it up so that I think I can set it up so we get there's a strobe and there's the laser. You can see just the laser on. So I have it set up so that what I've got is a strobing laser and a solid light. And that's set up as this is a little mounted magnet. I pull it out. It's got a trigger guard. So when I pull this, the lanyard is on the magnet for the instant on switch and the trigger guard. Boom. This is on right away. If I want it off, which there's a pretty good chance I want it off, I'm going to go ahead and turn it off. But if I need it on right away, it's on. Kind of like when the instant on comes out of the holster. If you know you don't want the light on a carry gun or a duty gun, you're just going to turn it off, because that's a lower level of emergency. So you want the fine motor skill when you don't need a light, not when you absolutely need a light right away. So that's how this is set up. And obviously then this light can be used, you know, intermittently, it can be used indirectly. You'll read about that, intermittent, indirect light use to search the house. Remember, when I'm searching this house, I'm not searching for a bad guy, right? If I'm searching for my family members, I want to make sure, or I'm moving, maybe I'm checking to see if an area is safe to move through, but in no way am I trying to clear my house. I'm not trying to search my house. You know, been through the training, taught the class, just give me 6 or 8 other guys. We'll start to think about clearing one floor of this house well, but we're not going to clear a whole house. So we can move through the house. I'll move through the house, get to a secure area, and barricade. So I'm moving through looking around for family. Because I'm moving through looking around for family, I don't really want my light and my gun to be pointing in the same direction all the time. If something catches my eye and I naturally will turn to look at it and I start to move the light towards it, now I'm also moving the gun towards it. So I prefer a handheld light. So this handheld light also lives in a tactical walls unit. Not the same one, but a different one. And some people will recognize this light. It's an old Gladius light from this working lumens. I don't know how many. I don't really care. It's got enough lumens for me to stand in any room of my house, point the flashlight down at the ground, and illuminate the whole room. So that's how many lumens you need. Don't get so wrapped up in the numbers. But home defense, you know, I've got gray walls and some dark floors and gray carpet and stuff, but any room I'm in my house, I can point this at the floor and it's going to illuminate the whole room. I can bang it into a corner. I can set it up to strobe. It'll do all kinds of things. Notice that with the handheld light, I've got a lanyard. I like the lanyard because if I want to pick up my daughter, if I want to go to 2 hands on the gun, we'll get to that in a second. Whatever I want to do with that hand, do something with my alarm, dial the phone, whatever, then I can get this right back, right? So it's sitting on my hand. I can just kind of wind around and get it back up into my hand without having to take my gun out of this hand, or if I'm holding somebody, whatever it is I'm doing. So light with a lanyard, especially for the home defense scenario, usually a little lanyard in the pocket. Also, now let's go to what happens if I have the gun and I have the light. I like to keep the gun, I don't know, see how we can do that. In ready position and use the light, as I said earlier, kind of intermittently and directly bounce it off the ceiling, bounce it off the wall, bounce off the floor. You know, I might bounce it off that wall and look in that direction. I don't want to walk around with it on all the time like the security guard guy that the bad guy can track based on shadows. And the gun is either honestly going to be in a holster with my hand on it, kind of staged, or out in the ready position with the muzzle depressed. And then if I need to shoot, I can either shoot one-handed, right? Drive out and shoot one-handed. I can pull in and shoot from retention one-handed. I can drive out and leave the flashlight pointed down at the ground and just kind of do one of these things like this, where the flashlight's kind of pressed up against the side of the gun and my fingers wrapped around the front. Or I can just let go and just drive out, shoot. All these things like this, never seen it help anybody shoot. And you're really just kind of tying the flashlight and the gun together anyway. The cigar technique, again, never really seen that stabilize somebody all that much. I like to just wrap the flashlight, keep that button depressed or put it on the constant on, and as if the grip were way wider, right? And as you see, it's very much like a grip, and the light's bouncing off the ground. The light's not a weapon for me, right? I'm not trying flashlight. I certainly can distract, but this is for fine shoot. I probably don't also need to have this pointed directly at the guy, especially again in a home defense scenario or a personal defense scenario. Now in a law enforcement scenario, it's a little different, and that's where you see some of these integrated techniques where you're shooting at a longer distance. So for that audience, certainly not as bad an idea to do an integrated. But the reality is, if you're doing something with the law enforcement side, you probably have a weapon-mounted light that is a high lumen, because now things are a little different. You're searching areas that may be larger. You don't know the terrain nearly as much as you would your house. So there's far more justification for the armed professional to have a very bright weapon-mounted light, long gun or pistol. And of course, that's where it gets confusing, right? Because anytime we try to take something directly from the law enforcement or military world and stick it into concealed carry or home defense, we quite often make a lot of mistakes. So don't confuse those. You want to have the 1,000 lumen weapon mounted light as a patrol officer, not a horrible idea. 1,000 lumen for home defense, you're probably blinding yourself off the wall that's 4 feet from you as much as you are doing anything productive across the room. And I know you can dim it and all that stuff. I got it. But don't get all wrapped up around the lumens.
Geez, Rob, don't you know you can dim those lights?
Yeah, you can, I like to put like a paper towel, like I fold it in half and then I put it over the light, and that's kind of my technique. And then when I blind.
All right, moving on.
Should I like make everybody, there's a light on the phone.
Oh my gosh.
That's the word when you mention that, I have this in my hand all the time. So sometimes I just use the flashlight on the phone. I'm not clearing the house with it, right? It's just, there is a light here.
Okay, so that kind of springs another question that I have, maybe some of our viewers have. Would you recommend using, or would you ever use your phone in a personal defense situation, the light on it specifically?
I have, like literally, I mean, if I'm sitting on a plane, right, and I don't know what the personal defense situation, I could use this. I mean, these phones are big now, right? Like I use this as an impact device. So not only is it a light, it's an impact device. The idea that somebody would be carrying a gun and like, the knife and they have the cargo pants and they go to classes and they're a personal defense network member and they're into this stuff. And they're saying, but I'm not carrying a flashlight because I have one on my phone. I don't think that person exists, right? Now you got a 20-year-old girl in college whose dad says, carry this. And she says, you're an idiot, Dad. I have a light on my phone. I think that you have to teach her how to, what the limitations of that are and sort of how she can use this. And because she probably can turn this on way faster, like than you can even turn, that button on, Dad. She can get the flashlight on. So I think we need to put it in context, right? Do I want SWAT teams running around with their iPhone lights? No. But the 20-year-old girl, she's not carrying this around. And if she even has it, it's in her purse or her backpack, the person that doesn't have the stuff. So like teach them how to use this, or even make them aware, like, hey, you got it. How many times I've seen people, like adult men, with these things in their hands, like, I need a light. Oh, my flashlight's in my, and I'm like, dude, your flashlight's in your hand. Use it.
All right. I'll put the flashlight issue to bed. Okay, so I think we may have, there he comes, coming back. Thought we lost Rob for a second. Are you able to join us again, Rob? All right. Well, while we're waiting for Rob to come back.
I think I'm back. I might be back.
You're back. But you know what? We're halfway through the show now. So I just want to remind those that are just tuning in now that this is PDN Live, Ask Rob Anything. And for those of you that are listening live, feel free to put in your questions and we will do our best to get around them. We do have a lot of questions tonight. For those of you who also are looking to find out more about some of the articles that Rob has already talked about in this broadcast, you can go to personaldefensenetwork.com and find all that information there. We've got an awesome search bar so you can search for topic for whatever you are looking for. We also have a great newsletter. It's free. It's great. You can also sign up at personaldefensenetwork.com. All right, let's see if we have Rob back. Rob, are you back? All right, well, we are waiting for Rob to come back on. And Rob, if you can hear me and you do come back on, just chime in. For those of you that don't follow us on social networks, you can follow us on Twitter at Twitter is at P_D_N. We're on Instagram at PD Network. We're also on Facebook on personaldefensenetwork.com. And also this is brought to you by Springfield Army. So saying thank you so much, Springfield, for sponsoring this broadcast. And I just got word that Rob is having a little bit of internet issues and he will be joining us shortly.
Hey.
Looks like he is back.
Well, kind of. I spun it up on my phone. I don't know exactly what's going on, but if you're hearing me, let's assume I'm back.
All right, perfect. So we're on the second half of this Ask Rob Pincus Anything. We have someone that wrote in and asked that let me pull up their question. They are considering doing ankle carry just because of their job. They don't list what their job is, but they want an ankle carry to fit their job and lifestyle. What are the pros and cons of ankle carry?
Well, the pros are, if it works for you, and I think this is important. This is an important caveat because for me, it's never really worked. Oh, look, I'm back.
Now we have two of you.
All right. So for me, it's never really worked, right? For me, I've had a issue with being able to conceal. In fact, a lot of people know I've been carrying that medical kit, that ankle medical kit around, and it is so light and it's evenly distributed and it's well made. So I don't have that issue of the gun. Even an airweight J-frame just has never worked for me down there. So if it works for you, it has the advantage of concealment, and that's really the only advantage. There is a potential for it being like a hidden gun. And I know a lot of law enforcement guys think of it that way, or at least they used to. I think now it's pretty common knowledge that a cop might have an ankle gun. But, back in the olden days, a lot of guys would carry their duty weapon, obviously, and they would carry it as a backup. They'd carry an ankle gun and or a pocket, being that if they were, taken hostage or somebody sneaks up behind them or they're wrestling around in a fight, everybody knows to go for the gun on the belt, but they might not think about trying to find a gun on an ankle. So you've got, even if you're carrying another gun as a backup gun, the ankle carry can be sneaky. It can conceal very well for some people, depending on how you dress and how your build of your body and which holster you're using. Other than that, there really isn't much advantage. I mean, the gun you're going to carry down there probably has to be lighter. It almost certainly has to be smaller than a gun that you're going to carry just about anywhere else on your body other than, inside the pocket carry. It's very slow in terms of getting access to the gun and getting the gun out. And it requires more mobility than a wider range of motion and more mobility than any other form of carry that's going to be, within normal arm's reach. You got to like bend your body in half, or pick your leg up, or, kind of lean over to the side and reach down. You got to kneel. Like, you've got to change normal body position, even from seated right now. I'd have to bring my leg up, in which case it hits the bottom of the table, so I can't get it up high enough. So I have to go down, lean forward, and bring my leg up. You know, it's get the leg up on the chair or something. And I'm usually pretty mobile, pretty, you know, flexible, got a good range of motion kind of guy. Like, you know, I'm fitness and, you know, yoga or whatever, all that stuff, doing a lot of stuff on the range. And I find it to be, you know, an untenable position in some circumstances. In a car, a lot of people talk about it for a car because they're sitting down. And I think somewhere this myth that it's really easy to draw from the ankle holster when you're sitting down got started. On a range, in a chair, when there's not a steering wheel and there's not, you know, there's not relatively easy, like the range. But in the real world, when you're sitting in a car, sitting in a chair, sitting at a desk, I don't think it's that much easier. So that's the biggest disadvantage to me, is not only is it slow when things are perfect, there are plenty of times when it's going to be almost impossible for somebody, unless they're really flexible, really scrawny, to get to that gun down on the ankles. That's the biggest reason I tell people not to, is you sort of you remove a lot of the circumstances in the extreme where you can even reach the gun.
So speaking about ankles, I saw on your Facebook a few months ago that you were looking for a small safety hook for your ankle medical kit. Were you ever able to find one? And if you did, what did you end up finding? Because I know a lot of our viewers they were really attracted to that ankle medical kit.
Yeah, we do. We get a lot of questions about that. So I do have it on. The one that I have is the Benchmade #5, which is what a lot of people recommended. You know, it's kind of like instant. Like I carry Benchmade rescue hooks, safety cutters a lot. The larger ones, even the Sock P one, I have a couple of those. I got one of those on a house kit actually around the corner. But then, so the #5, the little one, was what most people recommended right away. And of course, I you know, knew this one existed, but I wanted to see if there was anything else, potentially even smaller than this, that was viable. There was one from Gerber that I really liked. I was carrying it and then I lost it. And then there was another one, CRKT had one that wasn't as, on its own, it was very hard. It was like really flat, like an old, like what, the P38, like can opener kind of thing. And it was very hard to really get enough grip on to pull through a seam or to pull through something heavy, because it didn't have a ring. It was really just set up as like a little flat piece. And that one had some problems until I put it on a keychain. When it was on a keychain, then you could hold on to the keychain and kind of pull through, as long as, you know, it's a sturdy ring and all that. But the Benchmade one, the trials, and it actually creates a little extra friction with my H&H pressure dressing, the small compression bandage there. So those two things go into one pouch together, and very convenient. So that's the one that won the competition.
Nice. I'm glad that you were able to find one. Okay, so Lester asks, with all the different selections out there on firearms and handguns, he just needs some advice on the best concealed carry weapon around $250 and a good holster for it. Any suggestions?
Well, I think a lot of people probably just went like, what? That's crazy. And I probably would have gone, nah, you're going to need to increase your budget. But we are in like for a lot of people, you know, who've been around for 5 or 10 years, we're in like the slowest retail period of their gun lives. You know, it's probably not the slowest retail period, you know, in the last, you know, in my adult life, but certainly in the last few years, you know, I think we had an artificially robust firearms retail era, I think, you know, during the Obama years, honestly. So what we're seeing now, the Trump effect is what a lot of people are calling it. And it's a lot of complacency. It's a lot of, oh, we don't have as much to worry about. And I don't know if it's honestly, you know, politics hat on. I don't know if it's as much that we are now complacent, if it is that there was a lot of concern motivated buying, fear that you were going to have something. You know, a lot of states, when they've outlawed things, or even federally, when you own things before a law goes into effect, you get grandfathered. So I think a lot of people, every time they thought something was going to come through, ran out and like kind of bought what they could afford just in case. I know I did it in 1994. You know, when that federal assault weapons ban was coming in, I bought everything I could afford, and you know, I'd sold most of it. I barely have any of it left. I certainly didn't need any of it. So I kind of learned that lesson of the running out and gun ownership has grown. buying era to stock. And now there is a much slower activity in the retail market. So what you're seeing is some really good guns at incredibly low prices, especially in the subcompact. So I think like the Smith & Wesson Shield comes to mind, the XDS that I carry. I'm seeing some prices, you know, and it's not just the gun, but you get like the gun and send in the certificate. You get, you know, 3 magazines, 4 magazines, 5 magazines, whatever. So seeing those guns, I couldn't believe what I was seeing the Shield for somewhere. I think one of the entities had the Shield down in the 200s, right? And with magazines and all that. I just saw, I think PSA, Palmetto State, had a AR and an XDS 9mm, like the one I carry, for like $800, you know?
Whoa.
So yeah, it's, you know, with magazines and all things. So right now there's some incredible bargains out there where you can go on the new market and for $250 pick up a gun. You know, like I said, like that a lot of people would agree on. I would agree that XDS, that Shield, that those are good carry guns. I carry the XDS. The Shield, I see a lot of people come through the classes. The Shield's been very reliable. The Bursa BP is the other one that comes to mind that has always been sort of you know, bargain priced, and it's around that $200 range too. Then that gun, you know, got a bad. I've actually been testing one. I guess most of the last 6 or 8 months, and had it out on the tour, and I'd take it out and shoot it. Had a couple students use it. They definitely fixed the problems, at least in the ones I'm seeing. And I'm pretty picky because obviously I know those guys at Eagle. It's kind of, versus in the US, it's kind of like a sister brand to Avidity now. So I really wanted to give it another look because I kept hearing from these guys for a long time, like, hey, it's way better. We fixed it. And it wasn't good. Like the first 2 I had when it first came out were not reliable, and there were issues. Claude Werner, interestingly, he as far as I know, he thinks it's a great gun, and he's seen it be very reliable, with the exception of, he actually says the trigger might be a little bit too short. But you know, it's certainly not any lighter than a lot of the aftermarket triggers I see come through the class that are still have all the safeties intact. So the BP would be one to look at from Bursa, the Shield, the XDS, and really just go into the shop. You know, go into your local gun store and look around, and anything you see that's, you know, Glock, Smith & Wesson M&P, and the Springfield Armory, the XDs. Social media from HK, we've seen that enough classes now over a long enough period of time, and I've seen a lot of reliability. I've seen it work really well for people, but it's not going to, I don't think you're going to see those down in the 200s range. But go into the shop and just see what they have. You know, right now, if you are on a budget, scrape the pennies together right now, because you're probably not going to see things as cheap as you see them right now. Potentially for very long, as the Christmas buying season comes up on us and SHOT Show next year. So if you were hesitating to buy something, I would jump pretty quick. I think the market's going to shift.
Would you say the same for used firearms as well?
No, I think used firearms market actually fluctuates less. You do see people, when stock starts to run low, you can see the used market go up, right? So, you know, some people would you know, maybe buy a bunch of ARs right now and think, oh, the next time there's a, you know, scare panic buying spree, I'll make a bunch of money. That doesn't really work until the supply is down, right? Because if you go into a gun shop and you've got the expensive new gun or the expensive used gun, you're probably going to go with the expensive new gun until there aren't any new guns around, or the brands that you trust that are reliable are all dried up. And that's when you start maybe thinking about paying premium for the used gun. As far as the low priced used guns, you know, you can always go into the pawn shop and try to get lucky, but for the most part, you know, if somebody paid $500 for their gun, they're probably not putting it up on for sale at $300. The cheap used guns usually see are like law enforcement turn-ins. Be able to find, you know, in the 40 caliber, for example, there was just a thing going around here, and I forget which one it was. My twos were ridiculously inexpensive. In fact, there was even one flyer I saw from one of the companies that was like free Glock 22 police traded. What happens with the police turn-ins, you do see some really low prices, but you probably don't want the 40, especially if you're on a budget, because the practice ammo is going to be more expensive and all the other, you know, kind of not better things about it. So you got to buy the gun, and then you buy a 9mm conversion barrel and a couple magazines, and size guns in almost every case. So you might find something that way.
All right. So Ed asked, can you give any advice to someone looking at doing competitive shooting for fun, like IDPA, tips and training for it? Ooh, this sounds like a when worlds collide type question.
Yeah, I mean, Latham, where's Latham? Tag, phone a friend. Wait, can I FaceTime him? Does that work? No, I've never FaceTime anybody while I was on the thing. I don't know if that works. So I'll tell you that fun with it and just enjoy the crap out of it and use a different gun and a different holster and don't try to make it training, right? Like so much so, like Clint Smith told me like in 2003 or 4, I was trying to compete, but trying to do it right and the game, but I don't really want to play the game. And you know, this is long, you know, it's 15 years ago. I mean, it was when I was still trying to figure out this whole, that doesn't really seem to help. If someone's going to invest that much time, effort, and energy in something, why not just go train and practice instead of playing the game? And it always comes back to, but it's fun and it's social and it's all that. Okay, well then go have fun with it. Like just make it fun, but don't consider it training. So he said, you know, go do cowboy action shooting. So I did. I did cowboy action, did a season, did a couple events, run around doing cowboy action shooting because that was fun, right? And clearly, like pulling out a single action, you know, Caro bird's head grip was not going to be confused with training with a modern striker pistol to defend myself or my family. So that's the first thing I say is go have fun. However, you want to use it as training and that's your thing. Like, well, I can't draw from the holster at my range unless I'm in the IDPA match, or, you know, that's the kind of rationalization I hear from a lot of people. All right, cool. You're going to come in last. You know, if you're going to go out there and you're not going to play the game, you're not going to try to win, you know, you're going to put multiple rounds, you know, 3 to 5 shots in every target, not just 2. You're going to, you know, really use cover. You're going to try to skip the stage briefing whenever possible and actually more respond to what you see as opposed to memorizing you know, all that kind of stuff. You're going to come in like not going to beat is the guy that kicked out, you know, that got disqualified or his gun didn't work. So just be prepared for that. You know, you can't, I don't think you can do really well and consider it practice and training. You either got to accept that, hey, it's just for fun and go do it and love it and make friends and high five and win plaques and wear shirts and stuff, or train and accept that you're not going to do well in the competition, but hey, maybe you still have fun. You recruit like 3 or 4 people to go to a competition just for training, like commit to doing it your way, not the game way. You guys will have a blast.
All right. Next time we'll get the When Worlds Collide on here. Do another one of those. That was fun.
We did. We got, if people saw the one, we had one just a couple weeks ago where I shot a USPSA stage. So like, you know, Latham set one up and I had to play by the rules and I did, you know, I went and it was horrible. I mean, it was horrible. And then he's like, well, here's what you did wrong. And he just like says, you need, you know, and he cuts my time in half with like 2 dumb tips, right? Like do this, do that. And it was like, okay. So I did that. And then my score was like doubled and, you know, his score was still, but if you watch the video, it's interesting. I don't think he noticed it, and it's so obvious on the video, but it's obvious when he was given, you know, you should probably be standing right about here when you engage those targets. And so I dropped an ammo box there, and then the next place I was supposed to run to, I dropped another ammo box. So I left myself little markers so that when pretty obvious on this. So we didn't stage that. So like for any reason, except I was trying to like get away with something with Latham, but watch the videos because the first one is horrible. Like if for some reason you're watching PDN live, but you're like, Rob doesn't know what he's talking about. Look, he's all wrong. And he just watch that video. You're going to love it. You'll love it.
Deal. All right. So Louis writes in and says, I teach concealed carry weapon classes, but I open carry a lot for opportunities to teach and inform. What is your view on this?
You know what? You cut out. It teaches concealed carry classes, but something about open carry?
Yeah. What's your view on? And he does open carry to Inform and educate. What is your view on that?
Yeah, no, don't do that. Like, okay, it's like this ship. Hey, is this a setup? Did Jason over at Warrior Culture Gear like say, hey, ask him this question? He'll mention because I know it's backwards, but it's, protect what you love. If you go to the cover, if you look at the current issue of Concealed Carry Handguns on the newsstands for like the next 4 months, you'll see a PD-10 and me kind of blurry in the background. But the headline, the tagline right over me is the protect what you love. And this whole idea of, what's fight, don't bleed out, get yourself. But what about the motivation to not play the game, but to go practice, which is harder, not as much fun? And protect what you love is this idea that, and that's what that article's about. So it's not about tactics or guns. It's about a mindset. And it's probably like it's the first time I've written an article for a gun magazine on a newsstand that you would take to someone who's not a gun person and say, hey, you might read this. Like, if you want to think we're not crazy and understand why we do this, here's the article. That educates and informs. I think if you're carrying a gun openly, you may get 1 or 2, 3 conversations a day, or a week or a month or whatever, that you can point at and say, oh, well, I talked to this one guy and he ended up coming to the range the next week. I get it. Like, we all have those examples from when I'm, carrying a gun in, or I've got the logos on the side of my truck and all that stuff. But overwhelmingly, I know that even the logos on the side of the tour truck, there's a whole bunch of people that like kind of look at me more suspiciously, or don't come over and engage with me or whatever. And I don't wear a shirt like that says, make America armed again, or something like that. Right. Like, and I don't carry openly if I'm that applies very easily to the negative, right? I won't ever know the negative impact because those people aren't coming up to you. And if they do come up to you, well, that's like a double bad because you just created a confrontation, right? If somebody comes over like, oh, why do you need that gun? Oh, you're going to shoot us all? Or somebody calls the cops, hey, that guy's got a gun. It's like, I don't believe, and you can, again, look at the search engines and do this. I don't talk about it a lot on PDN because it's more of a political issue than a training issue. I do talk about responsible open carry in one of our PDN videos. If you're going to carry openly, you need to have a retention holster and things like that. But overwhelmingly, I think your gun should be concealed. You wear a shirt like this to start a conversation. Wear a shirt, Second Amendment is for everyone, seconds for everyone. Tony Simon in New Jersey, where his diversity shoots, where he tries to get people who don't fit the kind of standard mold of what a gun person looks like to come out to the range. There's a lot of ways to engage in conversation, right? But wearing a lethal tool for a political statement, I don't think is a good idea. So that's my thought on that. But thanks for teaching people. And I get it, like your intent, your heart's in the right place. And your CCW classes, I think you're probably executing it right. In the public space, there's probably better ways to start that conversation that don't open up a whole bunch of potential negative.
All right, Rob. So Brian says that this question has been tormenting him for quite some time now. You ready for this?
Oh, man.
His question is regarding something you said almost offhand during an episode of Training Talk last year with Grant Cunningham. Mm-hmm. Great episodes to watch too, by the way, if you have not tuned into that. But you guys were discussing something at the end of your statement. You said something about using ammo with heavy for caliber bullets. So why do you recommend heavy for caliber bullets? That
when I made 9mm is great. And probably what everybody needs, law enforcement, personal defense. And obviously the trend has been, we all got really excited about 40 caliber back in the 90s, 40 Smith & Wesson, based on 1980s or earlier information about the performance of the 9. And now that we're in, the 2000s, by the 2000s, we realized that 9mm ammunition had gotten a lot better, right? When you look at bonded hollow point ammunition with controlled expansion, 100% or near 100% weight retention, you see a much better performance out of quality 9mm ammunition today than you did in the 70s and 80s. Caused, I think, this big run to the 40 caliber. And of course, when law enforcement jumps on something, and then everybody wants to get involved in it, and that's sort of had a trickle down effect now that like a lot of law enforcement agencies are going back to 9. The FBI went back to 9. And my one caveat every time I said that was, for law enforcement officers, there's still there's more of an argument in favor of the 40 caliber, because there's a much higher likelihood that law enforcement officers may have to shoot through intermediate barriers than there is in a personal defense scenario, because, you know, red, blue lights and you go towards the bad guys, and the bad guys are sometimes in their cars or hiding behind a door in their house or something like that. So that there are, if you look at all the samples we've got, right, there's a much higher percentage chance you're going to have to shoot through something to hurt the bad guy if you're in law enforcement. And the heavier bullet, right, that's the main advantage in this regard of the 40 caliber, the heavier bullet will maintain its momentum and its path of travel better than a lighter bullet. So the idea behind the recommendation of a heavier 9mm bullet is that you still maintain as much of that intermediate barrier penetration capability from the 45 or the 40, but in the 9mm round. A heavier bullet also is going to, you know, equal and opposite force deal. Heavier bullet's going to potentially promote reliability in your gun better than a light bullet, especially in any kind of a compromised shooting position. Any, you know, when you're when you're shooting, and if the frame moves, right, frame moves with the slide, you're eating up some of that energy, right? So if you're in a compromised position where you can't lock out, can't get your weight forward, and you get that unsupported platform, well, the more energy pushing back, then the more the frame still going to get cycling is increased. So the heavier bullet is about reliability and intermediate barrier penetration. Honestly, like now with another, you know, 5 to 10 years of experience, it's kind of gone by the wayside, especially if you're looking at like a plus P. So if you see something, a 9mm, instead of jumping right to the 147, if you see a good bonded hollow point and you've seen good research and data that says it gets through heavy clothing pretty well, and it's especially if it's like a plus P rated 124 grain in that range, you're probably just fine. So it used to be something I really stressed. I think it was still me kind of holding on to that, you know, maybe 90s mentality, and now it's 2017. So any modern bonded 9mm hollow point is reliable in your carry gun, probably good to go.
Well, Brian, hopefully that question torments you no more.
Yeah, I could have been a lot worse, really.
Did I kind of scare you there? All right, we're heading towards the top of the hour, so we will, this last one, how about this? We'll do a nice inspirational one for the end. Let's see here. I just had it. What did I do with it? Okay, for ROC asks, for aspiring firearms instructors, what is the one piece of advice you would give them?
I don't know. I lost it.
Did you hear anything I said? Okay.
Rock.
All right. For aspiring firearms instructors, what one piece of advice would you give them?
I think you said instructors, not if instructors. Aspiring instructors. Okay, good. So I would tell them to really consider the audience far more than they consider themselves or their own gurus. You've got to teach your audience, and you've got to understand their context and their needs, not their wants. And if you aren't comfortable, you know, sort of spinning your presentation to the audience, then you're probably just talking to maybe entertain yourself or to impress your guru or friends or whatever. Like, you've got to teach the student. So I say in our instructor development, we don't teach a curriculum, we teach people. We're teaching things, and we have this whole of information that the curriculum's composed of and the programs are composed of, and we just go get the things we need for the student when we need them. And I think that is probably what's missing. That message is missing from a lot of instructor development programs that want you to read this line, then this line, then this line. You know, at 10:30, you got to be doing this. Well, not everybody's ready for that at 10:30. So I think it's important to diversify your message for your students. Now, it doesn't mean that you give, like I said, you don't give them what they want necessarily. You give them what you think they need, and you've got to be you've got to have a wide array of information or context or examples. Lane, you know, if you just want to teach concealed carry permits and tell people when they ask the question, well, I spend most of my day seated. you know what, honestly, that's not in this curriculum. It's not something I teach. Yeah, you should learn how to present from your holster while seated, but that's not this class, or it's not what I do. Because if you're not capable of safely tailoring or expanding a curriculum or going off on a little bit of a tangent for that person, I don't want you making anything up either. But do know that that's really one of the, I think, the biggest responsibilities of an educator, especially in our context, is to be able to identify what that person needs. I don't teach the same thing. I will, in fact, we now have the SWAT magazine website powered by PDN as a sister site. So if you go to swatmag.com and you see a video that I've done there, you look back at the other stuff I've done with SWAT magazine TV or the articles I wrote there, when I'm writing or speaking or educating for a law enforcement audience, I will say things sometimes that are pretty different. I talked about gear earlier, the weapon mounted light thing. Like for the military law enforcement audience, they get different information because their context is different. It's not secret information. It's not better information. A lot of times seated, I'm going to emphasize certain things about holsters and types of guns. So I think that's really important. Be prepared to tailor your message and meet the needs of your student. And therefore, you have to be able to identify the needs of your student with integrity, regardless of what you like or what you're good at or what your governing body. Percent of the time, you follow the curriculum. 9% of the time, you modify it and you'll know how. 1% of the time, you won't be able to because it's out of bounds or whatever, and it's just the curriculum won't fit in that hole. So give me a call. But for the most part, you've got to have some leeway to fit the student.
All right, well, that wraps it up for tonight's PDN Live Ask Anything with Rob Pincus, presented by Springfield Armory. Thank you so much, Rob, for being here, and thank you, everyone, for your live questions. We had a lot. We got around to maybe a quarter of the questions, so we'll have to get to those that we didn't get to later. Rob, let us know where people can find you and send us off for the evening.
PersonalDefenseNetwork.com, ICEtraining.us. And for the record, I did text Latham and see if I could get him the FaceTime in for his opinion on that.
Of course you did.
We'll have to wait. ICEtraining.us. As you said, I'm going over to Europe. I'm going to do some stuff over there. We've got a lot of law enforcement students over there and instructors. I'm going to actually hit a bunch of countries over there in October. And then what else is going on? And then, November and December here are slow like they normally are. For me, I'm going to be spending a lot of time finishing up the PD10. I've actually got, there weren't any questions. It's like the first, people are finally, they've figured it out, like, to stop asking, right? I've got like, I don't know, I've got this one, I've got this one, I've got this one we were shooting. I've got like parts of that all over the place. So that's the kitchen table. Together the instructor conference for those guys to shoot in Minnesota. So that project, the USCCA project, of course, there's this big collaboration we've got going on between Personal Defense Network and USCCA. And one of the big pieces of that is ICE Training Company are developing all the live fire CCA forward. So we've got some big announcements on timing and the next evolution for them on an instructor development basis to take their team to the next level. And obviously it's a huge honor for us at ICE Training Company, our defensive firearms coaches, the combat focused shooting instructors, all to be able to work with their team and kind of make everybody better. So we've been working through that, and that's going to be really exciting for 2018. So I think November and December, probably not going to be doing a lot of classes per normal. I'll show up down in Florida. I'll probably show up in New Jersey. I think I'm doing the class with Latham. We're doing the class with Latham in class. It's going to be cool. And then it's 2018. So find me on the internet between now and then.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.